Hello and welcome. My name is Darko Butarec. I'm the music and director and conductor of your Tallahassee Symphony. Welcome to our second concert of our reimagined 40th anniversary, Ruby anniversary season of the Tallahassee Symphony. If you joined us for our first concert, we welcomed Lawrence Brownlee, the great opera tenor, and presented the concert of arias and spirituals. This week, something entirely different, yet incredibly engaging. We welcome a young musician who's taken the world of the cello by storm. His name is Joshua Roman, and he came to international attention by winning the position as principal cellist of the Seattle Symphony at just the age of 22. 2 years later, he embarked on a solo career that's been nothing short of spectacular. He performs with orchestras worldwide, but in addition to that, Joshua is truly a musician with a capital M. His music ranges many different styles and quite a different approach to what a musician is today. In addition to performing with orchestras, he performs a lot of chamber music, a lot of new music. He curates a series. He's a fellow for TED. And in addition to that, he composes his own music. So it was an absolute honor to curate this program with him together, a program that really centers around the idea of being relevant. What does it mean to be relevant today? The program will feature pieces of the past that will feel connected to the time we're currently in, as well as Joshua's own pieces and pieces of contemporary living composers. Thank you for joining us, and I'd like to take the moment to recognize two big sponsors for the Tallahassee Symphony this season. That's Visit Tallahassee and COCA, the Council on Culture and Arts in Tallahassee. Thank you both, and we look forward to seeing you for the rest of our season. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome again to our concert. My name is Darko Butorac. I'm the music director and conductor of the Tallahassee Symphony, here with our guest soloist, Joshua Roman. Joshua, welcome to Tallahassee.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
It's great to have worked with you on this program. I'd like to share with the audience kind of our process and how it came about. About 2 months ago, I think, is when we started working on the program. It really centers around a couple different ideas, and I wanted if you could lead us through that a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, it's clear that putting a whole orchestra together is not possible right now. And I think very early on we decided that rather than have false representation, rather than attempt to do a Dvorak with 10 players
Right.
and have it fall short, we should embrace what we have and do the most awesome thing that we can. And so we came up with a couple of things. One was to have a lot of cellos.
Yes.
One was to have a lot of cellos, really be
We have a cello. I should share with the audience, I'm a former cellist.
right.
And
Never former, always still. Your cello still loves you.
I love the cello as well. And, you know, this is repertoire dear to my heart. And in rehearsal, certainly it's been a process of really kind of falling in love all over again with some of this repertoire that you don't ever always have a chance to hear in concert.
That's
so we have the cello element.
We have the cello element, and then I also really wanted to find a way, and I was so grateful that we were able to work together on this, find a way to take advantage of that moment where we're not doing what you would consider the standard orchestral repertoire, to do something that really feels of the moment, that really feels now, that really responds to where we are. And so taking a look around at classical music today and really thinking about composers who are alive, about the people who are making music in smaller settings, which is something that has grown over the last couple of decades by leaps and bounds.
Yes.
It's experiencing tremendous growth and audience growth as well. Classical music is exciting. Classical music has a lot going for it. And so doing that in a way that honors the tradition of classical music, that we're showing the past, the present, and maybe even a little bit of this future in this program.
What I love about this first segment of the program, which features, let's say, more traditional pieces, is that, in fact, the new music we will hear later on will inform, in a way, what we hear now from the past. So for this opening, the first piece we hear on the concert this evening is Grieg's Holberg Suite. This is just with the orchestra, but the full title of the piece is Suite from Olden Times, from the time of Holberg. Holberg was a playwright. He lived at the time of, he was like the Danish Molière. And so it was Grieg in his time looking back at the past and reimagining what music of the Baroque period would be like now that we're in the 19th century at that time. So that, of course, ties in to the other pieces we hear in the first set. And you brought a beautiful gem that we're going to hear, and that's the C.P.E. Bach, the Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach,
That's right.
Johann Sebastian's son. And just share a little bit about this unbelievable work.
It's so exciting. The first time I heard this, I could not sleep, literally could not sleep. I think I listened to it 20 times in a row. I had it running through my head. C.P.E. Bach really was a maverick. And in Johann Sebastian's life, his sons actually eclipsed his fame by a wide margin. Johann was very famous as an organ improviser and somewhat as a composer, but his sons were the ones really that were the trendsetters as far as new music was concerned. And you can hear that freshness, that excitement. In fact, sometimes I think with this particular concerto, it sounds more radical in some ways than a lot of music that you would hear written today.
Yes, I agree completely. When I heard it, you suggested it, and I said, okay, let me take a listen. And I think the first phrase was all it took me to get convinced. It's really, you know, this period of music that we find, we play a lot of Baroque music. We hear a lot of Bach and Vivaldi in concerts.
Right.
Of course, we hear tons of Mozart and Beethoven and Haydn of the classical period. But it's the period between that kind of gets lost in concert halls, because we don't have, as you mentioned in talking earlier, we don't have string quartets really in the repertoire. We don't have big symphonies. So the forces, coming back to the earlier point we started with, it was kind of custom designed. What did you have in-house? Who was playing at the court? Who would you write for? And in our case, it works beautifully because we basically have a string ensemble supplemented by continuo, supplemented by percussion. And these are the pieces that we managed to form around. So another piece you chose in the program was Meditation of Thais. Now this is something completely different. This is a piece that comes from a romantic opera, often played by violin, but of course arranged also for cello. Beautiful work. How does that fit into your vision of the program?
Well, in a few ways. Number one, it's a meditation, and it's a meditation that carries significant weight in the opera, in the story, where Thais is actually trying to decide whether to leave the life that she knows and devote her life to religion, to God, essentially. And that kind of deep thought, I think, is something that a lot of us are feeling right now, and not necessarily in the same way, but life has stopped. Life as we knew it stopped. And I know so many people right now that are taking that moment to consider big questions,
Yes.
to think on those. And this music, to me, really evokes that. But the other thing is that I grew up in a family of violinists, and I studied with a violinist for the first 10 years. And they stole my music, and so I'm stealing their music.
I love it.
But again, the
I
forces,
love it. It's cello justice.
That's right. The
Yes.
forces that we have, you know, it's back to that tradition. The tradition of classical music is not one that was decided in advance. It's what's here, what's cool, let's make it happen throughout the years. And getting back to that, I think, is something that we're doing in this program, and it's very exciting for me.
Well, our final piece of the first set, this is something I found in trying to complement your ideas, is an arrangement of a quintet by Boccherini. Now, Boccherini is a composer who is closely tied to the cello because he was a phenomenal cellist. You know, we have, I think there's 12 concertos extant.
A lot. Yeah.
And really somebody who had an unusual career in the sense he was an Italian, born in Lucca, but his career took him to Spain. And the piece I chose is actually a guitar quintet that's been arranged, in this case, for string orchestra with harpsichord. And it's a fandango. And fandango, of course, is a dance from southern Spain. So it really is a fusion of styles. And for me, the reason why I like to bring this out, we have the fusion of really Moorish elements. There's even castanets in the piece. There's a lot of arabesque sounds. And of course, evocation of guitar playing. This is, to me, this is a little bit what we find when we listen to some of the other pieces later in the program, that when styles fuse, when unusual influences come together. So Boccherini finishes the first set, a lot of cello love, and fusion from different cultures. Joshua, welcome back for our second set of our concert. We take a completely different turn, and we're featuring music of today. Three composers who you are friends with?
I know two of them.
You know two of
and
them?
I've been in touch with Alison. I've not yet met her. But
So we have Caroline Shaw, we have Gabriela Lina Frank,
that's right.
and Alison Hall.
Right.
Three female composers. Why did you choose to program these pieces? What do they mean to you in regards to the whole journey of this program?
Well, I really wanted to give us a sense of how you can approach the creation of music, how you can approach composition differently.
Mm-hmm.
And these are three different ways of writing a piece of music. For us, we hear it one way, but I'm always curious what's behind it. Is there a story? Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. Each composer may have their own way and may even vary from piece to piece. So we start with Caroline Shaw's piece, Limestone and Felt, and she says that in this piece...
This is a piece for...
This is right, so this is with
for
marimba
cello
and
and
cello.
marimba.
Yes.
So our marimba player, Mike Glaze, will be joining you for this.
That's right, and he really, really learns this piece well. I'm so excited that we get to do this, thank you. And this piece, Limestone and Felt, there are two surfaces.
Right.
But there are also two ways of approaching sound. You know, if it's a surface, it could be a cathedral, or Caroline says, the inside of a wool hat, limestone and felt. But this is also a very hard sound and a very soft sound. And the piece is constructed to play with that dynamic.
Is one instrument limestone and one is felt?
Not so much. It's
No.
within each instrument.
So you're trading back these characters throughout.
That's right.
Yes.
It's really, if you are listening to the piece and you're getting a sense that there's some sort of relationship between hard articulations like, you know, t or k, and soft articulations like w. If you're getting a sense of that playful nature and how that develops, then you've got the piece.
Excellent. What about the second piece, the Alison Hall?
So Alison's approach is more narrative. Alison is telling a story, and the story that she's telling is a very, very important and deep story. It's the story of young girls who are sold into marriage, and the piece is called Stolen. It's for solo cello, and it's in three parts. Each part represents a different part of that, a different stage of that process. At first you have this sort of lamentation of the lost childhood, of that being stolen away from a young girl. And then in the middle, you have a section that is very much filled with anxiety and fear and sadness. And this is sort of represents the idea of learning about what's to come and what is going to have to be done to become an adult at such a young age. And then at the end, in the last section, there's the submission. There's the recognition that this is life. And yes, there's still the memory of those moments from childhood, and some of them even joyful, but in essence, the submission to reality.
Have you performed this piece many times?
No, this is my first time performing this piece, and I was very grateful to Alison for sending me the music.
Well, we're very grateful to be able to feature it as part of our concert. It's very special.
Yes.
And so that leaves us with Gabriela and Lina Frank, the Zapatos de la Chincha. Is that? do you remember?
Zapatos de Chincha.
De Chincha. What's
De
a Chincha?
Chincha.
Zapatos
Chincha-
are shoes.
Zapatos are shoes, right? And Chincha is a town. It's a city on the southern coast of Peru. And so this city has this remarkable Afro-Peruano music and dance, and in particular, this tap dance, this kind of light kind of tap dance.
Which is
that
why we have
happens.
the shoes.
Yes, zapatos de Chincha, yes. I'm not wearing shoes, but that's, you don't want to hear me tap. But the rhythms are very much present in this piece, and the cello also kind of acts as, there's a cool instrument you may have seen at some point, the cajon, where the percussionist sits on a box and
It
hits.
literally means box. Cajon means
Yes,
box.
cajon
yeah.
is box, yes.
Yeah.
Super cool. And this approach to writing music is one of a cultural lens. This is taking a kind of idea of a rhythm that means something in a specific culture. It has a specific meaning, and it's very evocative of that. You know, if you are from Chincha, then you may recognize these rhythms. You may
Right.
have a direct association with it. So these are three different approaches to writing music, and I think it's really for me, it's very interesting to be able to experience them side by side with the cello kind of as this stable element throughout, as we experience these different modes of communication.
So Zapatos de Chincha is a piece for violin and cello.
That's right.
This features our concertmaster Shannon Trem.
And Shannon, again, has done a wonderful job. I'm so thrilled that musicians are willing to learn music just for this concert and really put everything into it. It's fantastic.
It's our pleasure. You mentioned the socks. I have to ask you.
Right.
We've talked a lot about pieces. We haven't talked a lot about Joshua. That's in the next segment. But
Right.
Why do you enjoy playing barefoot?
You know, a long time ago, shoes are to protect my feet, and otherwise I'd rather not wear them. But there's a very specific thing of feeling connected with the ground when you play the cello. And we're sitting, and so it's tempting to, I lift my feet sometimes when I play, but really to feel grounded, to feel like the energy. I've done some yoga and some Tai Chi, and I just love being able to have a physical feeling that informs how I move, that I'm aware of, that helps me stay grounded and connected emotionally.
Well, a lot of the rest of the body is moving while you're playing.
Yes.
Right.
And if it's just moving on its own, then there's a lot of extra tension.
Right.
You develop
so
a lot
in a
of
way,
tension.
it's your anchor,
Yes.
from which you find freedom in movement.
Precisely.
Yes. Yes.
Precisely.
One thing I noticed about your playing is that it really seems effortless,
Oh, thank you.
which I think is just what, as musicians, we all strive. We're looking to eliminate tension. The same way a great author is looking to reduce words to find crisp meaning, as musicians, we're trying to eliminate extraneous things and really focus on our craft. Well, really a wonderful program.
Thank you.
Joshua, for our third segment tonight, we feature your music.
Yes.
So I'm very excited because the Tallahassee Symphony Orchestra, we have a chance to actually premiere music this evening, and we're going to get into that in a moment. But I'd like to talk a little bit about your background. We haven't had a chance to get to know you as a person and as a musician. Of course, prior to the pandemic, you're playing all over the world. You're playing with orchestras, you're playing concertos, but that's not all who you are. You really see music in a much broader sense. Would you mind sharing a little bit of that? How your experience of coming to music, your upbringing, and how that influenced and how that grew you as a musician and as a person?
Sure, yes. I grew up in Oklahoma, and I started playing the cello when I was 3. And my family is full of violinists.
You mentioned earlier, your first teacher was a violinist.
Yes, yes.
An unorthodox way to start.
Very unorthodox. Lacey McClary really set me up well. He, it was an experiment. It was an experiment to be a 3-year-old and very serious, immediately loving the cello. And by the time I was 6, I wanted to be a soloist. That's all I wanted to do.
Wow.
And being in Oklahoma, access to teachers who were good and willing to teach such a young child was hard to come by. So we did the experiment of studying with a violinist. I'm sure that affected me in many ways that I have not yet discovered. We talked about some of them. I love the melody, all of these things coming from the violin perspective. But the other things that really shaped me, I think, had a lot to do with being outside of the usual infrastructure of classical music.
So we're talking like taking lessons, playing in youth orchestra, maybe playing some chamber music, and then going to conservatory and on. But that wasn't your journey.
No, and I didn't go, the Saturday Juilliard prep school.
Right.
If you're in New York, that's where you go. All of these things. We did what we could, and we didn't have a whole lot of money, and there wasn't a whole lot of infrastructure in Oklahoma City, but we did everything that we could. What it ended up looking like, though, was chamber music, for example, was really me playing with bands. I didn't have a string quartet until I was studying with Greg. I think it was my first chamber music experience. And before that, I took my cello and played with my friends. Somebody would be on the djembe, somebody would have the guitar or the piano and singing, drums, whatever. It didn't matter. It was just, I've got a cello, you make music, let's make music together.
Let's jam.
Yeah, and I didn't understand that there was supposed to be a line between classical music and anything else. I just played the cello. Cello is good for everything, right?
It is.
And it's extremely versatile. So doing that really shaped how I thought things would go. And then once I got, of course, to conservatory and really drilled down on the fundamentals of playing the cello and the repertoire and all of these things, I lost some of that, but not all of it. And over the years, since I've left and since I've begun my career, I found over and over again that I personally feel a very deep connection to the pre-20th century classical music tradition. That musicians generally were trained in many elements of music making. That there wasn't such a distinction between composer and performer. In fact, every composer that you can name before the 20th century was also a performer.
Except Wagner.
Well, he was 20th century.
Yes.
Yes.
Wagner is the place where music really undertakes a fundamental shift. In that, I think when we first started talking about programming, we were saying, what would it be like if Yo-Yo Ma, Itzhak Perlman, Yefim Bronfman were all amazing composers? How richer would the world be if our soloists would do that? And I'm so glad you're somebody who does that.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I think our audience will discover the music in the concert. But for me, I see the influences that you bring from other styles, from other places. You also you curate a chamber music series
That's
in
right.
Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that informs in a way the way you approach music. So
Definitely.
tell us, we have 3 really cool pieces that we're premiering. 2 of them we're premiering tonight.
They're all world premieres.
The offshoot as well. Okay.
Yes,
So
yes.
it's 3 pieces. Lead us a little bit through them.
Right. So the piece for cello quartet, Offshoot, is something that came about when I was actually composing something entirely different. It was a double concerto for Vadim Glucksmann and myself.
Wow.
With the Pro Musica Chamber Orchestra, David
Vadim
Donsmeyer.
is a great violinist.
He's wonderful.
Yes.
Yes. And we were to play this in April. Now it's May of 2021. Fingers crossed. And I was, it was just this thing that came out when I was looking for something entirely different. And that's why I called it Offshoot, which is a very personal kind of name. It's a very process-driven name because I actually managed for once to look away from my sort of driven goal to finish that section of the piece, instead to sit with what was happening, to enjoy these funky rhythms and these harmonies that I was playing on the cello, and to forget about what I had hoped to do that day, and instead wrote this piece, which is really fun, kind of like a song. I tried to put lyrics to it, and we're not going there today. Not
So
at
this
all.
is a cello quartet.
This is a cello quartet, and the way that I composed it is that I did it with multi-track recording. So I would sit there with the computer and a microphone, and I would lay something down, play it for a while, and then I'd go back to the beginning and I'd add another layer. If I didn't like it, I'd redo it, and then I'd progress that way through the different sections until I got to a point of stopping.
So your process seems to be really defined by, let's say, laying down whatever the initial track is. It's really kind of improvisatory.
Very improvisatory.
And this is, I think, one of the things that we sadly lack very much in the training of classical musicians today.
Well, it is, again,
It's changing.
Yes. Well,
People are definitely becoming broader than before, but I know myself, I look at my schooling and I regret not having had more opportunity.
Right. I was not trained, and it's just not a part of our system.
Right.
I picked it up other places from the age of 10 when my parents threw me into the church band and there was no music. And I said, what do I do? And my dad said, well, you just play. And I said, what if I play something that's like wrong note? He's like, well, play a different note. That was it.
I love it.
That was it. And I've carried that with me. You know, it's fun. Music is an expression of what you're feeling. And
Right.
we only write it down so we can do it again later.
Exactly.
And it's a very sort of basic way of looking at it. But I think sometimes the fundamentals can change how we approach everything in a beautiful way. And that's very much how I approach composing when I'm doing it that way. It's not the way I always compose. I like to try to change things up so that I don't get too reliant on one mode. But that's how I composed Offshoot, was just playing. And later, when the pandemic came, I had been in touch with Gary Poon of the Protostar Group. And that's an organization that I like to say helps fund artistic entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial artists. And also a lot of charities. They do wonderful work. And Gary had identified me as someone to write a big piece. Last year, we had talked about a commission of a concerto or a sonata, something big. But when the pandemic struck, we started talking, and he said, Joshua, I really feel compelled to rethink the commission. I want to do something that speaks to us right now. And I couldn't agree more. All of my concerts had been canceled. I wasn't sure what to do with myself. I'd started playing Bach online every day. I was like, I don't know what to do. I was doing too much. I was playing all these caprices, piano caprices. But focusing on finding a voice for the feelings that we all are going through during the pandemic really helped me. So he commissioned the musical journal. The Protostar Group commissioned the musical journal, of which we're premiering 2 pieces tonight. And essentially, a journal, is keeping a record of what's happening. These are musical entries from the pandemic, from lockdown, starting in April and continuing even today. I'm working on it. And the 2 entries that we'll be working on, I've given sort of provisional titles. One is Un Amour Lointain, which is a faraway love. And this came to me, isolation can be very isolating. And I think a lot of us went through that. I'm single. I spent a lot of time alone. And I had this vision as I was composing this piece that there was a sense of the cosmic, of space, and even the kind of cold light that you have in space that maybe comes from the moon or a faraway star, but at the same time, something very intimate. And in this vision, I couldn't tell. It was such a melange of these 2 things. I couldn't tell if that intimacy was actually close or something from the past or even from the future. And a friend of mine said this very well. She was talking about the idea that, if there's somebody who is the love of your life, they're alive right now, even if you don't know them. And to think of that person right now, when the world has been turned upside down, and to give them your love from afar when you don't even know who they are. I think there's something very poignant and beautiful about
Very
that.
poetic.
So that's That's the image of this very meditative piece of music.
I can say it's one of my favorite things in the program. I'm absolutely touched that we're able to premiere it, and it really I love. It's a glacial pace.
Yes.
It's a glacial pace that I think succeeds in moving, and it's incredible when you have a piece that is so drawn out but does not feel long. It's about 7 minutes long. For me, it feels like it's 3 minutes to play.
Right.
So, what about the last piece we're doing? Also from the musical journal entry.
Also from the musical journal, this is an entry that came when I was essentially on the Great American Road Trip. I had been living in Santa Barbara. I took off. I needed to get to Seattle, but I really wanted to see my family. So I drove to Missouri, to the Lake of the Ozarks, where my sister was with her husband and their 4 kids. And then I went to St. Louis, where I have a brother, his wife, and 3 kids. I went to Oklahoma and saw my parents from 6 feet away, and also my brother and another brother and his wife. And then I was headed to Las Vegas to shoot a film, and I needed to have another entry from the journal to share for that. An outdoor in Las Vegas in August, socially distanced film.
So
never sweat so much in my life.
This is happening when we're talking about the program.
Yes,
just so we know, this
right,
piece is
right.
like fresh, hot off the press.
That's right.
Sorry, continue.
No, you're right. In fact, I think I sent you the recording right as I finished.
Yes,
pretty
yes.
much. And this came to me as the first moment, I think, that I felt truly hopeful since COVID-19 really hit us in March. And I think it had a lot to do with moving, with heading somewhere. I'd made some big decisions about my life, and I got in my car with everything that I own, and I struck out to go and do it. And along the way, on this giant loop, I saw such beautiful open country. America is huge. America has so many wide open spaces, and I'm traveling across states and through cities that, you know, there's no denying the politics today are on everyone's mind, and such different ideas. I drove through such different ideas, but underneath all of that was this great, vast land, and the hope that I felt when I would turn a corner and see a canyon or the forests, national parks I'd never heard of that I would drive through, the wide open spaces, really all of that together gave me something that felt not trite, not light, something that was really grounded, again, in the moment. This is an experience that is not all light. There is darkness. But through that darkness, I felt light, maybe for the first time, that didn't feel fake. And that really, for me, this music, I felt like I needed that.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to share it. And I was so grateful that we're able to do this. I listened to all of these, they're just recordings. And so I sat down and I listened to them, and I wrote them all out by hand to send them to Konstantin. And here we are making this music with living, breathing people, breathing through our masks, but sharing something so important, that musical connection that I've never appreciated so much in my entire life.
And I should say, in the same process, as we started this program, we talked about how music was made at the time of C.P. Bach, how, you take the resources you have and you make the most out of it. And that's
right.
Exactly what we're doing. And I'm absolutely thrilled that you brought your pieces. They're beautiful, and I think the audience will be thrilled to enjoy them.
Thank you so much.
For our final segment this evening, we present a wonderful piece and a wonderful story, the Vivaldi Double Concerto in G minor, played by Joshua Roman, our soloist, and our principal cellist, Greg Sauer. Now, there's a very special story behind this because Joshua actually studied with Greg back when he was a teenager. So,
right.
Gentlemen, what was that like?
For me, I was floored when Joshua came through the door as a 14-year-old, 13.
I think I was 14, maybe.
You know, a sweet young guy accompanied by his mother and a couple of other siblings, and he played just lights out, amazing cello, and I was like, wow. And of course, I'd love to be your teacher. And then we had some lessons, and it became clear to me that my main job was just to do no harm. Just to encourage him to follow his path musically and on the cello, and maybe steer him here, a little bit there. And it's so wonderful, after a few years have passed, to be playing together tonight.
It really is. I remember our lessons being full of wonderful ideas and the way that you would tie things together, like having me sing or talking about the feelings behind the music and the poetry of it, and really getting me thinking about everything that goes into the sound, not just how to produce the sound, but how to feel the sound. And yeah, it was cool being a teenager. You know, that wasn't necessarily always the first thing on my mind, and it stuck with me. It stuck with me through the years, even when it didn't come out. And I feel like that seed has grown. It's really, really fun to be here playing together, finally.
Yeah. Exactly.
After many years. You sound great.
Likewise. It's been a real pleasure to hear you.
Well, it's a pleasure to work with both of you, and I'm really happy we could finish this entire concert of Cello Love Fest, as it were, with such a beautiful and iconic work. Thank you for being a part of our concert. Joshua, thank you, Greg, as well. And enjoy the last piece, and we look forward to seeing you at our next concert in December.